In this series, we've been talking about being with Jesus. When Chris first asked me to speak, I was thinking about, okay, God, what is it about being with you that feels like home to me? It tends to be the best place to be able to speak from. And I just felt so strongly the need to talk about what it is to talk to God. And I picked Psalm 62 because there's that beautiful passage right in the middle that says, trust God and pour your heart out to him, for he is your refuge. And I feel like a lot of us, we all hear it nearly every week, but it has been a year. It's been a hell of a year, maybe even a hell of 2 years. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. And I feel like this morning what God wants us to do is come before him and pour our hearts out. Not the polite, hi Jesus, thank you for listening, talk to me kind of prayers, but to pour out all the stuff that we just have in our hearts this morning. If that scares you a little, don't worry, I'm still talking for about another 15 minutes before we have to do that, so just prepare yourselves. You should probably know I'm a verbal processor, and I think really fast. So basically that means that I think a lot and then I talk a lot to try and work out what it is that I'm thinking, and about 20 minutes later we land on the point. So my conversations at home, Bobby will say, how's your day? And I'll say, yeah, good. I had this for breakfast, and then this happened, and then I saw this thing, and then I read this article, and then I talked to a friend, and then I went for a walk, and then this, that happened. Was that really good? I don't know how I felt about that, actually. And then I land back on, actually, I had a really good day. And he's standing there going, that took half an hour. It was your whole day in half an hour. So basically, I say, lots of things really fast. And when I first came to know God, someone said to me, God knows everything you think. He knows all of your thoughts. So there. And I was like, all of them? Like all of them, because there's a lot. I don't know that he can actually keep up. And I started to read the Bible and understand, no, wait, he really does know all of my thoughts. And for me, Psalm 139 speaks right to this. And it says, you have searched me, O Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise, and you perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going and my lying down. You are familiar with all of my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, Lord, you know it completely. And I'm going to be honest, to start with, that was terrifying. And there are accounts of Jesus that I was reading where he knew what people were thinking. He knows what Nathanael's thinking at the fig tree before he's even met him. He knows the situation for the woman at the well. He says to the people who are the leaders of the religion at the time, why are you thinking those evil thoughts? He can read minds and hearts. And I was really overwhelmed because I started to worry about what I was thinking all the time. I would worry that what I was thinking and that it wasn't okay to think what I was thinking. And then I started to worry about what I wasn't thinking and what I should be thinking about. And then I thought, well, I've got to talk to God about this. But how do I talk to God about this? What do I say? He's God, and he already knows. So how do I say what I'm feeling so that he feels like I know what I'm talking about, all the while not really understanding what I'm talking about? And it just became so overwhelming, especially because when I get very emotional, I tend to be a little less polite. And my heart breaks easily, so I talk a lot. I also cry a lot for myself, but also for people in the world. I'm someone who generally is moved quite easily by situations of hardship for other people. And I remember struggling with God early on because I felt like I was so burdened. I'd seen a film about child soldiers, and I had just given my life to Christ, and I came home and I was like, God, I've got to sell everything I own. I can't do this. I can't handle this grief. It's really too much. And I don't know how to talk to you about it, and I'm angry about it, and what are you doing about it? And a friend of mine said, well, why don't you read the Psalms? And I was like, oh, okay, don't know how that's going to help, but sure, having not no any idea what the Psalms were. And I turned to the Psalms, and I read this in Psalm 6. It says, be merciful to me, Lord, for I am faint. O Lord, heal me, for my bones are in agony, and my soul is in anguish. How long, O Lord? How long? And Psalm 13 says, how long must I wrestle with my thoughts, and every day have sorrow in my heart? And I kept reading, because the Psalms were this place where I found comfort, I found words, I found other people crying out to God in a way that I was trying to but couldn't. And I just want to have a side note here that there is definitely some language in the Psalms that I struggle with. I struggled then and I struggle now, where we ask God to kill our enemies and we want victory in battle. And I think it's really important that we should read those verses in context. A lot of the Psalms are written by King David, who was literally being chased by enemies, who wanted to take from him everything that God had in store for him. And he had nothing but his life, and in caves with very little, and he had God. So when we find it difficult to connect to those words, I think it's been really powerful for me to read, or actually, God, while I don't want to pray that prayer, I don't in that situation, what you're teaching me through your Psalms is that I get to call out to you with whatever situation I am in. And in Psalm 62, as Andrew read before, David does that. He's the author of that psalm, and he says, trust in him in verse 8. Trust in him, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. And in that one sentence, David says three things. He says, trust God, talk to him, and then he talks about who God is. And this is the last part is really important, because how we see God, how we trust in him, dictates how we will talk to him. There will all be people in your life that you won't tell something to for a lot of reasons. Either they may come back with an argument, or they might tell somebody else. But there are people that we protect parts of ourselves from for good reasons, for healthy boundaries. And there will be other people in our lives, and I hope you all have what I like to call fridge friends, who will come over, go to your fridge, make themselves their own cup of tea, and sit down on the couch with you and bring the box of tissues, or the chocolate, or your favorite wine, whatever it is you need in that moment, and then you can pour your heart out, and they will stay for as long as you need, and then they'll stock your fridge, and then they'll leave and probably come back the next day. And I like to think about God being my fridge friend. He comes in, he doesn't need to make himself a cup of tea, but he makes me one, and he'll sit and we'll chat. And the way David sees God, through the psalm we see it, he says he's my rock, he is my fortress, he is my salvation, he is the safe place that I go, and he's the only one that can still this unrest in my spirit. Being with God is the only time I can feel peace while everything else is in chaos. Now, when I first looked at this, I was like, great, Lord, that's the psalm, that's the verse I want to speak on. And God was like, read the whole thing, Kylie. And so I did. And actually, what I noticed was that David mentions pouring his heart out, but actually, more than that, far more than that, he talks about being silent before God. Verbal processor, thinking really fast, crying a lot, and God's telling me to be quiet. And I just thought, that's not fair. But it's really, really important. And I'll read the first part of the psalm again. It says, truly my soul finds rest in God, that my salvation comes from him. Truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken. How long will you assault me? Would all of you throw me down this leaning wall, this tottering fence? Surely they intend to topple me from my lofty place. They take their delight in lies. With their mouths they bless, but in their hearts they curse. Yes, my soul, find rest in God, for my hope comes from him. Truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress, and I will never be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock and my refuge. Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your hearts to him, for God is our refuge. And I discovered that the first verse of my soul finding rest in God is actually better translated as before God only, my soul is silent. I can tell you that it's very rare for my soul to ever be silent. Silence is uncomfortable and it's difficult. And after a while, when you can get past that difficultness, actually there's a lot of peace. But I can't generally still my mind that easily. I always think of something else, which is where the pouring out to God is amazing. I basically just keep talking until I get to the end of myself, which takes a while. And then I'm able to be really silent before God. And I began to wonder about this relationship. Why, God, is there a passage about being silent before you and a passage about pouring out? Those two things don't seem to work together. Because the outpouring of our hearts is about the pain, it's about the heartbreak, it's about fear, anxiety, also about joy and elation. Fun little side note, elephants actually really feel the emotion joy. They're actually quite emotional animals. I studied them for a while, and they are incredibly joyful together. So if someone in the herd falls pregnant, or if there's a new baby, all of the elephants carry that joy with them for quite a long time. Just thought that was really fun. So when they're out there frolicking, playing with water, it could be some news that we haven't heard yet, which is very exciting. But basically, I realized that the two elements that we were looking at this morning is the peace of God in the stillness and the silence before him, where he addresses the issues that are on our hearts. And the pouring out to him is our emotional response. We pour out all of the things we're feeling and thinking. And that is really important for us to do. We need to get out all of this stuff, because if we don't, we just put it there for another day and put the next days on top and put the next days on top. And eventually, it will come out. But God says to us, come and tell me all of the emotions. Come and tell me all of the things that you're feeling. Come and, if you can't talk about it, cry about it. If you can't cry about it and you want to scream about it, scream about it. Whatever it is, if you need to dance it out, if you need to paint it out, if you need to... My mum used to go and swear at a jar of Vegemite when she was really angry. We always knew she was really upset when she'd go into the cupboard and if that's what you've got to do, take your Vegemite or Marmite, because we're not in Australia, to the cupboard and invite God there and he'll talk to you. But we were made to feel. We were designed to. And we are designed to feel together in community, which is where gatherings like this are really powerful. It's where hearing testimonies from people, those wonderful things happened in their lives, and the difficult things, and then the breakthrough happened. And I think it's really powerful that we get to hear those things. We talk about this as sharing testimony a lot, but that will speak to everybody else. And Eugenie, I applaud you. That was really brave to get up here and share a dream, having been here for 3 weeks. And I praise God for that moment, because that's my favorite hymn of all time. And we may be able to sing it later. Phil said yes. I went and asked him as soon as you said it. I said, can we sing that later? Because I think that was really profound, and I feel like God spoke that to you to share with us today. And I love that. I love that you can be here 3 Sundays and be hearing from him on behalf of all of us. So thank you. Back to where my notes. David tells us to share all of those things with God, because it's not just about the outpouring and telling God everything we feel, because he says he already knows, which means that David wants us to move from the outpouring of our emotional response to the place of stillness and peace, where we feel comforted, where we feel at rest. Even though we feel all of these emotions still, they don't go away. We just give them to God. We just ask him to hold all of that for a moment. And then he comes and says, I'm going to give you peace now. So you can step up the next day and feel all those things, give them to God, experience my peace. It's this beautiful transitional place. It's not a straight line, although I'm drawing a line. It's more like a circle. He gives us the strength to go and feel some more. He gives us more strength to go and feel some more. And as we trust God and come to know him as our rock, our refuge, and our fortress, and our safe place where we can say all of these things, we tell him the little things that trouble us, and then we get to start, because he proves himself trustworthy, we get to start giving him the harder stuff. We get to start giving him the longings and the hopes and the things that we have been on our knees for a very long time, and the things that feel absolutely impossible. We get to give him those things as we practice the little things. And while preparing this message today, I really felt like God spoke to me about grief. And I felt like he said, we have a collective grief as a community. There will be a lot of things, and I am not going to pretend to know everything that everyone is going through. And you know what is on your heart. And God knows. And then there's the grief that we share as a local community, having watched people around us that we know and love suffer this last year, seeing and hearing stories through our social supermarket of the struggles that people are facing, knowing that that isn't necessarily getting easier as the world opens up. There's a whole nother level of things. Hearing about the youth, the things that they're struggling with as they adapt, and the young kids as well, and the impact that that will have on them. The elderly, who have maybe been more isolated than they have ever been because of the condition of the world. Families who are far away. And then you have global issues, conflicts, famines, natural disasters, racism, injustice. I really struggle to come before God because I say to him, where do I start? I don't know where to start, Lord. And that's where I sit in the silent place. And then all the emotions come. And I pour them out. And then I go back to that place. For some of us, talking to God about things is easy and really messy. We become these beautiful puffy-eyed kids, sometimes snotty. I'm a snotty crier, just to let you know. Don't know if anybody else is like that, but I get all of the works when I like to cry. So some people are like that. And if you have started that this morning, if you're home and experiencing that, then just be in that place with God. You can listen to me later on catch up if you want to. But you can just start to be in that place if he's starting to help you to process things. But for others, it's not something that comes easy, and that's totally fine. It's really okay if you don't cry. It's something that I think we do, but there are lots of reasons why, and we're all built differently. So for some people, our emotions pour out of us. It's not something that we can control. When I was younger, I used to get in trouble all the time. My dad would say, "Stop crying," which would just make me cry more. And he didn't really learn that that was not helpful. So he taught me to drive. I did something wrong. He shouted at me. I cried. He shouted at me for crying. I cried more. And he got out the car. And so then I went to my mum and said, "Mum, can you please teach me to drive? Because I didn't think that my dad and I are going to survive this." I can drive, by the way, guys. My dad did end up teaching me. We worked through it. But something that was really hard, I think, for him initially was that I just used to cry all the time. And I struggled with that too. I'm like, why do I cry all the time? I'd like to not cry all the time. That would be really nice. Actually, I get a headache from how much I'm crying all the time. And I just felt like God was like, come to me and pour it out. And then find my peace. Let me put you back together so that you can pour out again. It didn't stop. So for some, perhaps you've been hurt by expressing emotions freely before. It's something that you feel maybe people don't call you because they're worried that you're going to burst into tears, or they think that you you feel things too much and it's too hard, or you can't watch certain television shows so you're out of the loop because it makes you too emotional. And for some, and this weighs quite heavily on my heart, is that you've had to suppress emotions for survival. If that's you today, I want you to know that God really sees you. I would never have thought to put that in there. And I was praying through my message, and he said, there are some people who might find it hard to cry because if they did, they would have suffered terribly. So I just want to say, God sees you this morning. And if all that you can do today is breathe and be with God in the silent place when we practice later, then do that. Because he doesn't want anything from you. He just wants to be with you this morning. David says, trust in him and pour out your hearts. He doesn't say, don't tell God, because he already knows, even though he does. He says, come and pour out your hearts because God is safe and he is listening. He created you and he loves you and he has watched you every day of your life. He knows what you're thinking, he knows how you're feeling, and he also knows what you're not talking about. And that's not designed to scare you, that's designed to put you at ease. So if we all came together and poured out to God this morning, and if we trusted him, and we found our peace in God, what would that look like? We'd look like a community that could stand together through pain. We'd look like a community where people can come to church however they feel in the morning. My t-shirt was wet this morning because I washed it too late last night and I really wanted to wear my red one. Life is messy and it's not perfect. I'm usually covered in snot. James actually has vomit on his jumper because Mars threw up on him in worship. All of that is welcome. All of that is welcome. It's okay to come if you've been crying. It's okay to come and just cry if that's what you need to do. And it's okay to come and not cry. This is a daily practice. It's not just a one-off Sunday event. As my husband reminded me. Something that we get to do every day. But when we do it together collectively, there's a real power to it. And there's a weight where we all help each other through those moments. Sorry, I'm just finding my place. So as we come together, in just a moment, we're going to talk and pray. And I'm going to open the mic out. So if you feel like God has a prayer on your heart for things you want to pray out over the people of Brockley, over people here, over people in our world, you are very welcome to do that. And we're going to experience some moments in silence. And if you feel nothing during this whole time, that is okay. Just ask for God to come. And if all he's bringing you is peace and silence, that's amazing. And I hope that you can rest in that this morning. We're going to grieve for a long time, but this morning we're going to start by trying to process just some of the things in our world, like I mentioned before. And I know a lot of people at the moment have on their hearts the devastation in Afghanistan. So feel free to pray over that. The earthquake in Haiti. And the storm that's about to hit America. Peter 1:5 says, "Cast your cares onto him, because he cares for you." So Phil and Jerry, if you wouldn't mind coming up. I'm just going to ask them in a moment to play some music, because I find that sometimes puts me at ease. First, I'm going to invite you to stand if you can, as we think on some of this. If you find standing difficult, or if at any point you want to sit down, you can. If you want to sit on the floor, you can. If you need to take your shoes off and run around, you can. This is a really safe space this morning. And perhaps you've worked in for the first time and you don't know who God is. I just wanted to say you're really welcome. Thank you for being here. And I know God would love to talk to you, so ask him and just see what happens. Maybe David talked about God as our refuge. Maybe that's not God for you right now. Maybe he seems a bit distant or away. And we're just going to pray that God will draw close to you this morning. I encourage you just to open your hearts. Perhaps you've talked to God a lot about something. I have many friends who are in this place. I have had times in my life where I'm at this place and nothing has changed, and that is really hard. And I felt like God say to me this morning, if you are in that place, I heard him say, ask again. Even though you are weary, ask again. And I will stand with you in that prayer. There's a beautiful passage in the Old Testament, a story where Moses is praying for victory, and he has his arms up and his arms get weak. And when his arms lower, they start losing. And so people come alongside and they hold his arms in worship of God. Let me hold your arms today if you're in that place where you feel like you just can't talk about that anymore. You don't have to. God knows. Find peace in the silence. So I invite you now to close your eyes. Hold out your hands. You hear us say this every week. There's no magic in that. It's just to help you avoid distraction. The open hands just says, I'm here and I'm waiting for you, God. I'm ready to be open. And I just invite us now into that silent place. undoubtedly things will probably have entered your mind just now. And it's okay. Father, I ask that this morning you would bring to our attention the things, the thoughts that you know of ours that you want us to share with you this morning. The stuff that weighs heavy on our hearts. The cries that we have for justice in the world. I thank you for your presence.